Gorm Tuxen, welcome to the EO360 podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I really appreciate it.
So, Gorm, my grandmother, her name was Elsa,
Yeah?
Elsa Bullman. She
Oh,
came over as a teenager, late teen from
yeah.
Germany.
Okay.
My grandfather came to the States, Joseph Castellano. He
Uh-huh.
came to the States from Italy
Yeah.
uh, around the same time. He was a little bit older. And he had a shoe shop in New York
Oh,
City.
wow. Oh,
So
cool.
he was an entrepreneur, immigrant
Yeah. Yeah.
entrepreneur, and
Yeah.
my grandmother. Sadly, my grandfather died. I never met him. He
Yeah.
died young, but and when he died, my grandmother needed income, and
Yeah.
so she went in New York as well. She started a health food shop in the 60s, maybe it's even late 50s.
Wow.
I can't remember before health
Yeah.
food was even a
What's
thing.
even the thing? Yeah.
And so I'm very proud to say I I come from those are the two most recent entrepreneurs in my life, and I'm a very proud entrepreneur. It's how I can identify myself as one of the key words is I'm an entrepreneur.
Right.
And my grandmother and my grandfather were entrepreneurs from other countries, and that's the topic today. I'm not just randomly telling you that story. That is the topic we're talking about today. We're talking about immigrant entrepreneurship in America.
Yep.
Coincidentally, also the name of the book which is what led to us getting to know each other here is you have a book you just wrote called Immigrant Entrepreneurship in America by Gorm Tuxen, Tuxen, if you're looking for it on Amazon. And Gorm, you're a Danish immigrant. You went from working in a carpenter's shop to becoming the founder and CEO of what's called the Tuxen Group. If I'm not mistaken, that's a holding company for a collection of tech companies in security and parking and transportation. Did I get that about right?
You got it exactly right. Yes.
All right, we're going to learn a little bit more about that, but
Yeah.
the crux of our conversation today really is about immigrant entrepreneurs. And it's an interesting segment.
Right.
So thank you
Yeah.
for joining me. You are an immigrant entrepreneur.
Uh-huh.
Tell me a little bit about your journey from Denmark. What I mean, I know Denmark is a closed, I don't know what you call it, closed community, 10 million people and
5.5 million. So very small.
five and a half,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they don't let people just come in and
No, they
become a
have more,
citizen.
for whatever it's worth, they have one of the more restrictive immigration policies. For instance, in contrast to Sweden, which has a very open immigration policy, and it's a bit of point of contention between the two, the modern day Danish Swedish war. But yeah. Very different, and 5.5 million people. It doesn't take much to start diluting the whole culture. I mean, this is a country that has its own language, has sustained that back from the Viking days and the whole culture that goes with it. So it's an interesting case study in how to manage for that. I mean, we in America are in a somewhat different situation because we are an immigrant nation. We are constituted of immigrants. So uh,
Everyone. It was 250 years old this year, and
yeah,
everyone is, I mean, is an
it's
immigrant.
an immigrant. That's how we
Well,
built this
comes
country.
from immigrant, a descendant of an immigrant, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Much
So,
different than European countries where people go
well, I
back
mean, I tell you,
decades. I mean, sorry, centuries.
yeah. Well, we're a melting pot here. We are truly an experiment as America. I mean, it's a when you come in from the outside, it's easy to see. And of course, like anything else, if you are in a place for a long time, you just take everything for granted. I'll give you a quick example. If I go to Copenhagen now, I'm taken in by all the old buildings. When I used to work there, I never even noticed them. The core foundation for how immigrants relate to society are fundamentally different between America and pretty much the rest of the world. I mean, you could argue, maybe Australia, New Zealand, places like that, that were more or less founded as immigrants would be the closest parallels to what we are.
So take me through your journey. I mean, it was 1986, which at this point is what's that, 40 years? 40 years ago,
Yeah.
you emigrated. I think, well, anyway, you're here.
Yeah.
And tell me about that journey. Tell me
Yeah.
what led to that happening.
So I came here as an exchange student, 1975 to 76. So I was here for the bicentennial, talking about the 250-year thing, um, and I was just taken in by America. I had some history here in the sense that my grandfather immigrated in 1928, which was absolutely horrible timing, of course. And by 1932, he was packed up and returned on a stipend of $350 that his mother sent to him to bring his family back to Denmark. So my dad was just a young child when they went back to Denmark, and grew up there. My dad's twin brother joined the U.S. Air Force when he turned 18, and that was sort of the story and the background about America. So we always had this family connection here, but from different vantage points. So I was curious about it. I had some things happen. We were in a major traffic accident that really kind of made me grow up very quick, and I needed fresh air. I needed to get out, and that's also part of the entrepreneurial thing, right? The curiosity, I wonder if I can do that. I'm going to take a risk because it makes me focus on something else. So, I came here for a year as a high school student and absolutely fell in love with America. I mean, I was like, "Oh, why was I not born here?" I mean, this resonated completely with my value system, the American dream. It was so evident. I was so curious that people could have things without other people being envious, but rather go, how can I become like that? And ask questions of those people like, can you help me understand how you became successful? Which in Denmark was the exact opposite. That it would just be considered the rich, and they were privileged, and they just needed to be taxed more or less. So a total opposite approach to the whole culture issue about how you grow your country and grow people as individuals. So totally take it in, finished my high school year, went back to Denmark with one mission in mind: get back to the United States. That's what it was all about. So
Were
my
you unique among your peers, or was that a common theme?
no,
Did a
no,
lot
I
of
was
people want to come to America?
no, no. It was in the 70s. We were in right after the Vietnam War.
Man,
As a
yeah.
matter of fact, when I went to college, I had to go up every morning, and most of them were asleep anyway. But we would have the typical propaganda about America as a dominating power, and the reflections of the Vietnam War, and I'd go up there every morning and pretty much yell at him and wake him up and say, "Anybody been to America lately?" And of course, in those days, you didn't just go to America. That was a big thing. I mean, in my whole area of the country, I think I was the only one. I got written up in the local paper and everything. But no, I was atypical and counter to everything that was going on by the time I came back. But I wouldn't give it up. I mean, I went through. I would. A funny story. This is not in the book, but as a sidebar, my English teacher was let's say he and I were in different political spectrums. And I learned very quickly how to debate. And I really believe in strong, open debate. And I believe in us reaching consensus because you learn something from people who think differently than you do. I mean, but he and I got to be best buds. And he gave me George Orwell's 1984 to read. And of course, I finished that in 2 weeks. And I'd already done the whole curriculum for the year. And so he gave me projects through college with the objective that I wanted to graduate with in American. And he said, well, you can't graduate in American because this is an English class. And I said, well, we can debate that till the cows come home. But the only thing I know is that there's 200, at that time, 200 something million people on the other side of the Atlantic. And guess what? They speak American. That's what I want to graduate in.
Yeah.
So
We,
I
we
actually,
do speak American, don't we?
yeah, Yeah, so and it said you can graduate, but if you're not perfect, then you'll get a failing grade, and if you are, you'll get a top grade. So I took the gamble and graduated with a top grade. So and I had also learned for immigrants to in anything that language is culture, right? It's about understanding, being understood. Otherwise, you can't communicate very well, and you can't become a part of the fabric that surrounds you. So, it was for some reason always a key thing for me to do that. And then after college, I took a job as as a student in a hardwood company that was importing wood from the U.S., hoping that they were going to send me over here. They sent me to southern Germany instead. So I picked up my German, so that was good. I mean, but it didn't take me to America. Then, as I was finishing that up, my apprenticeship, uh, I've learned about a graduate school that was founded by a group of private companies, which was completely counterculture to Danish education because that's normally public education. And they were very restrictive in their, selection criteria as far as who could become students.
This was
And
in
then,
America.
pardon, no, it
It
was
was
in Denmark.
oh, in Denmark. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So then, I got accepted, and through trials, tribulations, and a whole bunch of other stuff, landed a graduate thesis on setting up a subsidiary in the United States for the largest Danish furniture manufacturer. That's a
Mm.
whole story in of itself that you can find in the book, but I managed to get that, and that's what got me over here. So in 1982. I came over, and that was the beginning of my permanent residence in the United
And
States.
so
So
you came to Nashville and you started a Scandinavian furniture, but it was a subsidiary of an entity in Denmark.
no, actually, the first thing I did was to set up the subsidiary and ran and put that up. Then my two bosses left, uh, and uh, uh, after a year or so, of course, we stayed in touch, and we decided that we wanted to open our own stores in the United States. So I left my employment there, and with those two partners, started up the furniture store in Nashville. So.
So you said 82, you
Uh,
came over to the States. When did you get your citizenship? How long did that take?
1990, I believe. So it's 5 years, and I got in status in 1984. And then it takes 5 years after that you can, so yeah, so I think it was, yeah, right in that neighborhood there. So, 1990. And then so I got it as soon as I possibly could. I had my application in on the 5 year date. So,
So I
uh,
am not very educated on the immigration um, process or
yeah,
policies here in the US. I mean, naturally, I hear what you hear in the news and pop culture and so on. I'm curious of what you know about the immigration process. What are your thoughts on the immigration process here in the States? My understanding, what I've heard in stories on NPR and
yeah,
is the complexity of getting citizenship is intense. It's
it is.
very difficult to get citizenship here in the US.
It is. And it's one of the things that creates our problem because on one hand, we need people. On the other hand, we have legislation that doesn't allow people to come in. And one of the driving reasons for that is how the system is quoted. How many immigrants we can actually take. If you look at the influx of immigrants, because I distinguish between immigrants and migrants. I don't use the word illegal immigrants because in my mind there is no such animal. There are people that choose to displace themselves into our country, and then they say, I want to live here, but they don't have papers. So they're
Yeah,
migrants.
illegally, right? Isn't that
Exactly.
what it
They're
is?
migrants. I mean, migrants go everywhere, but it doesn't mean that they can stay there. It just means they chose to move there. And I think it's very important as we have these discussions that we distinguish clearly between what is what, because immigrants are people that follow the rules and become and go through all this stuff. I had to go through it, even though my dad was born in the U.S. I was married at the time, so we had to go through that whole process, and it's a trial. I mean,
Wait a
and
minute, your
even
dad, you said your dad was born in the US?
yeah, yeah, he was
And
born.
so I don't know the rules. I thought if your dad was born in the US, if your dad's a US citizen, that doesn't give you citizenship?
uh, if you do it before you're 18. And
Oh.
we didn't know anything about that. So when it came time to get me in status, my automatic American citizenship application had expired, and I knew
Oh
nothing about
no.
that. And that's
Had you
something that's
known
not
that?
very and it's not something that's talked about very widely, but even there's a restriction. You got 18 years to make up your mind. We didn't know that. So I had already turned 18, so I got thrown back in the basket with everybody else. So, yeah, so it's very restrictive. And a lot of the quotas that are within the immigration law now is being used to change people's status. Like, for instance, if you come over on a work visa, on like a high level technician from India or something, you will typically get an H-1B, which is a temporary work visa. It's not a green card or an application to become a citizen, but many of them file an application for to immigrate later. Well, the quotas that are set aside for new immigrants are used towards that purpose. So there are all these circumventing things that eat up the quotas that really doesn't allow for a lot of new immigrants to come into the country. We've kind of, and also, and of course, I don't complain about that because I'm one of them, but people that got status because they had family, so it was a family transfer, which wound up being the way I came in. But all of that to say that the group of people that we can actually um, bring in that may have the right attitude, aptitude, and altitude for becoming American citizens and being productive members of our society is very small. It's incredibly small. So what do we have? We got a whole bunch of people pushing our borders because we got a system that doesn't allow for them to come, and then we just choose to. And that this everybody's guilty here because what we need is common sense immigration reform is what we need, and we tried during Reagan. We legalized 19 million migrants, and we said that was going to be it. And then ever since then, it's just been regressing back into what it used to be. And we need to have a framework that works for us as a country, and that perpetuates immigration, but with easier and more common sense access than what we're doing now.
Yeah, this is I mean, we're recording this in the middle of 2026, and this is a pretty hot topic right now
Yeah,
politically.
it is.
And to be honest, I don't really feel like getting into the political side of it right now, but we
No,
sure could. Oh my
yeah,
God, we
yeah.
sure
Oh, I
could.
know.
That
It's a
would be a
very
fiery conversation, but I don't want to deal with the consequences of that. So we're going to stick to the entrepreneurial element of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I would love to hear your. I just went down the path of getting in the conversation about ICE and immigration and so on. Man, that would be fiery. We could do it. We could do it. Might be our most listened to podcast, but we are not going to do that, Gorm.
No, and
Tell me.
that wasn't the intent with the book
Oh, I
either.
know, I know.
It's not a political book. It's really a book about perspective. It's something I wrote to try to illustrate for other people what is it that makes immigrants successful as entrepreneurs? Because if you go back and I mean, if you want to look at the high echelon, you got 50% of all the billion-dollar companies that are actually founded by foreign founders. So what is that?
Say that stat again. Wait, 50% of what?
If you take the companies that are tech companies that are over $1 billion in capitalization, you will find out that almost 50% of them are founded by foreign founders.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
American companies.
American company.
Wow. That's
Intel,
incredible.
Intel. He was Hungarian, right? We all know about Elon Musk. He was South African, right?
Yeah.
And you can go down the line on the tech stack, and you can find them all there. And they were all Taiwanese, with the, and whatever. So what is it that makes them successful? And what has how have I gone through all of my challenges and become successful? Well, by seeing things that other people don't see. Because the thing that you have, you come here knowing nothing. So everything is possible. And you also have to make paycheck. I mean, you have to feed the family. So you can't sit there and dwell on it for a long period of time about how you're going to do that. And you may most likely not be the best hire, especially if your language is not perfect. And you may, and you come with a different educational background from a different country, or whatever your challenges are, you're always challenged. So you have urgency, you have a need, and you need to develop a perspective that makes all that stuff come into some sort of a congruent mass pretty quick. And I think that's and then you start looking, and then all of a sudden you see things that other people don't, because it's easy when you know a lot to miss a little, but the opportunities lie in the anomalies, not in the established. I mean, as you were talking about with your family, is go out there and do something that you're really good at. But it's always about being better or being more discerning than what you find ordinarily, and stand out and do it, because you got to.
So Gorm, I want to come back to some of the things you talk about in the book, specifically about immigrant entrepreneurs and some of their characteristics. But before we do, let's take a little detour. I want to find out more about your entrepreneurial journey. So you came in, started this. Came in as a subsidiary of a Danish furniture company, and then you went off, started your own furniture company.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you ended up in tech. Tell me about that transition. Walk me through your entrepreneurial journey. I mean, you're no spring chicken there, Gorm. I see some grays on top of that head. What's left
Been
of
around
it?
for a while, taking a few punches that have all been worth something, So,
Hey,
but
you and me
yeah,
alike, man. I got the grays now. I look, Gorm, these pictures pop up my phone. They're like 10 years ago. And it shows me a picture, and my beard was nice and like brownish, and my hair was blondish.
yeah,
Like, what the hell happened here,
yeah.
Gorm?
Well, life just goes too fast. I'm telling you, especially when you're busy. It just kind of just boom one
It
day.
snowballs. I
Yeah,
heard you ever see that kid on Instagram, the School of Hard Knocks? You
yeah,
ever see him? A young
yeah,
kid, he interviews
yeah,
billionaires. He just runs up
yeah,
and says, "Hey, you look like a billionaire. How'd you make your money?"
yeah,
Awesome. I just love that kid.
yeah,
And but he asked this one guy who was an older person, made his money in tobacco.
yeah,
I think he was in his 80s, like
yeah,
83, 86. He was definitely up there.
yeah,
And that was one of the things he said. He was like, I came from about when I turned about 45 years old,
uh-huh,
everything started just going so fast.
yeah,
And I feel the same thing. I'm 55. I
yeah,
feel the same
yeah,
thing
yeah,
about a decade
absolutely.
ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I started this company when I was in my early 40s, and I feel like that's not 25 years ago.
Wait, what did you
Yeah,
start in your early 40s?
I started the first company within Tuxen Group in my early 40s.
Okay, so that's after the furniture store, because I'm
Yeah,
doing the math
yeah.
and I'm
So
like, you're not
I'll take
80.
you. Yeah, I know. Let me get you back on
Yes,
the time track here.
let's go there.
In the late 80s, we ran into a recession. You remember the yuppies? The yuppies were our customers. I mean, they were like, if I had to get a socioeconomic, target group, that would be it, yuppies, right? But they all got laid off. And so, our core customer got laid off. And in the meanwhile, the exchange rate between the Danish currency and the American currency changed so much that our importing prices were going up with at 30%. So I was under price pressure on costs and my customers were dying. So that was pretty obviously not a very sustainable path, you know. I mean, um, I sat my bank down and negotiated an orderly shutdown, and thinking that there's just no way that I was gonna. I had to. We were sitting on a lot of inventory, and I knew I had to liquidate that pretty quick, and I
When was
couldn't.
this?
This was in 1989.
89.
So
But you're already a citizen because you became a citizen 87, give or take, right?
yeah, no, yeah. I became a citizen in 19. What did I say? 1990. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
this, yeah. So yeah, that's correct. So that was the year after we shut the store down. So, um, but in the meanwhile, PCs and computing was becoming the big deal, right? I mean, I had worked with it in the store. I put in an accounting system. I worked with a company to develop my own software because it didn't do what I wanted it to do. And so on the side of running my own business, I got to learn about how to use software to manage things and the whole networking thing and all the stuff that was happening at the time. And as you remember, there wasn't really a bunch of experts around at the time because everything was happening so fast. Every time we go through one of these technology shakeups, it's like, okay, new skills need to be learned very quickly. And I made it my point to say, I really want to be in the technology industry. Of course, that was something I wished for, but I actually managed to make that my new goal. And again, right after we shut the company down, shut the furniture store down, I had a friend of mine turn me on to a Taiwanese entrepreneur who was good buddies with Chiang Kai-shek, who was still alive at the time. And he was mining coal in South Carolina and shipping it to Taiwan. And so he was obviously a very wealthy individual. And he had a trading group. And in that trading group, it's before the internet. So I was trying to sell everything from blue jeans to the Russians to Euro pallets to Deutsche Bundesbahn, whatever came over the telex, right? And a lot of Asian companies do that. They're kind of got their figures in a lot of different things. Then one day I was watching a technology segment on CNN, and I saw this in-vehicle parking meter, which looked like a little pocket calculator. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. It rains in Denmark all the time, and nobody wants to go out and vend money for the parking meter, So I thought that's interesting. So I went to, I went and found out where I could locate them and reached out to them. And one thing led to another. Before you knew it, I was a new research and product development consultant for the world's largest parking meter company. And it was really common sense. I mean, I started with trying to take this product to Denmark and met with the city architect in Copenhagen and stuff like that. And one thing led to another, and they were in a technology transition from mechanical to electronic meters at the time. And we're having some challenges in the market with adaptation. And I came in and figured out that it was really more of a political operational problem, mostly related to the fact that now you could actually count the money on the street before they made it to the counting room. So a lot of money that had not previously made it from the meter to the counting room, all of a sudden got all collected. So and it
That's
made a very
amazing. So do
yeah.
you know, like, how much do you have metric? I would imagine you know how much you could save a company to avoid the fraud that they
Well,
didn't know was happening.
I can tell you that one major city in the U.S. more than quadrupled their collections.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I mean,
So
talk about a great sales pitch for you
yeah,
guys.
yeah.
That's incredible. Ultimately, you started a company though called the Tuxen Group, I think, right?
Tuxen
And
Associates was the first company in that group. So that became my next step when I left my corporate employment. So
and so what did you build on your, tell me about the entrepreneurial part of this. I mean, that was cool. That's cool to get into that's how you got into the industry, but it sounds like you built some companies
Yeah.
around that industry as well.
Yes. Yeah. So after I left my corporate employment, I said, okay, no more corporate employment. It's never really been in my genes anyway. I'm I'm more of a free thinker. Let me put it that way. So
Yeah, a lot of us entrepreneurs tend to describe ourselves that way. I think
yeah,
that's very kind of us to say that about ourselves,
yeah,
as opposed to we're unemployable.
yeah. Spot on. I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the conclusion everybody came to. So, but that was okay. I got a severance check out of the deal, and then I started looking, and one day I come across this parking magazine that had an article in there about paying for parking with a cell phone, which is, more or less common now, but then back then brand new. And they were doing it in Europe. And one of the companies involved on a supplier level at the time was this company Nidap in Grunlo in Holland. Well, come to find out that Nidap was a diversified electronics manufacturer that was about 80 years old at the time, a long established company. And um, so I went and visited with them. And my eyes were just wide open because, I mean, they were latest everything, I mean, people walking around in white lab coats and stuff like that. And that was not the environment. I was coming from a factory down in Arkansas where we were doing zinc die casting one end and putting electronic components in another. So, complete change of environment. And of course, with my European roots, all of a sudden I saw there's a real connection here because it's a paradigm shift for the Europeans. They too are immigrants. I mean, they don't understand America. They work everything on their perception, and these days that's very hard, difficult, and misinforming way of getting information because of all the stuff that's going on in the
Yeah,
world.
yeah. It is fascinating when I travel to hear people's perception of
Yeah.
America and how different it is than from reality.
Yes, yes, and that's why a lot of companies are not successful in the U.S. because they send their own people over here and they don't have the cultural wherewithal to understand what's going on. So they see things through the lens that they would see it in Europe or Taiwan or wherever else they're from, and it just scares them. And then they want to change it to something they're comfortable with, but that just sends them in a spin because there is no relation. You have to learn everything from scratch. So my company's role became exactly that. I mean, we Tuxen Associate was started as a business development company, and we became partners with Nidap. Like I said, I was done with corporate employment. I wasn't going to need employment, so I just said no. I'm not going to be employed, but what I am going to do is get up every morning and have the same concern that you do, and that's to get something done and get your product out there. And that has now led to a 25-year relationship. It's the kind of like the anchor business in what we're doing, and has taken the company from no sales in the U.S. or anywhere in the Americas to a leading provider of long range identification systems in all of the Americas. We do business U.S., Canada, and South America all over the place. So
Have you considered selling?
yeah, I mean, not really. I'll tell you, I've been so busy doing that I haven't been that busy thinking about selling. What I have done is I have two folks that have been with me for, up to 20 years that are now associate partners in the business. And so I've really focused on what's here, my group, and carry that culture and that company forward. And then, we'll see what the future brings, but it hasn't really, it's never really been a question for me to lead to some endpoint. It's been really more about building the journey and enjoying every step of it,
That's
so
really interesting. I mean, John Warrillow was a guest on the show, gosh, years ago at this point. He wrote a book called Built to Sell. And
yeah,
the idea is that, a lot of us go out there and we build companies with the intent on creating enough value to sell for something. It's
yeah,
like it's a game. And
Yeah.
it's I'm kind of curious. I mean, I think your position on this is rather unusual, where you're not even really thinking about an exit strategy.
No, not in terms of just selling, more in terms of carrying on. That's been my focus. Is my continuance planning has been investing back in the people that helped me get where we are. And I'm 68, so I know where I am in the landscape of things. There's more behind me than there is in front of me, but it's really about creating value for the group and for our stakeholders more than it is an exit strategy. And uh, I'm probably um, a little bit influenced by fate, that I'm like something will show and I get solicitations and I get things, but it's not the key driver. The key driver is to continue building what we have got and then we'll see where it takes us going forward.
So it sounds like you're a busy, invested entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Why take the energy and time to write this book? Like what I mean, I heard I guess I could put the pieces together, but I'm curious, like I get why you wrote this book. What I don't get is why did you write this book now? It sounds like you're pretty invested in your business. How is this not a distraction for you?
Because my two partners are pretty much running operations as it is. And that's been the plan, is to
Yeah, beautiful.
mentor them to be able to have full ownership of operations, build build a confidence with our clients. They're where I was when I started this company from an age perspective, right? So and so I have mentored them over all these years to get to that point, and have been fortunate enough to have them invest with me for all those years, and also fortunate enough for them to learn and adapt and get ahead of where they would have typically been if they hadn't taken the mentoring to heart. And really that also answers the question about why the book, because the curriculum that I realized all of a sudden I had a curriculum because I had built this company. I mean, one of my associate partners came to me right after he finished his MBA, and he was 26, and he's been with me ever since, right? And I have, and a lot of the people we hire from other things, not technology, because I'm really bent on having them come in without a perspective. Because when you hire somebody that is inside, they bring their perspective. And after a while, people have a tendency to adapt that as, well, that's what we need to do. So they'll bring the perspective they had from another employer to you. And then you go through this whole period of hatching out who's right and who's wrong. You don't really come up with anything creative. You come up with a compromise is what you come up with. So I've always been very counterintuitive in the way that I've done things. And I mean, because most people say you can't do that. People say you can't build a company that starting out with five SKUs, right? Well, we did, and we made it a big business. They say you can't hire people from outside the industry and be successful. Well, I've been in all kinds of industries. The best thing I could do was come in with a perspective that wasn't the perspective that was in the industry at the time. And so after all these years of doing that, I realized I had a curriculum. And then when had the opportunity and I was approached on the, on writing a book, I thought, wow, I mean, I actually have probably enough to address both the immigrant angle of of coming to America, but combined with my own experience and mentoring in having different perspectives, being counterintuitive, travel paths that other people don't travel, take risks where other people don't take risks, all of those things. And it comes with some bruises, but you learn from them. And if you learn from them, you get there faster, because when it hurts, you learn. And when you're successful, you don't learn so much. You just get richer. So, That was really the impetus behind the book. As this transition was coming to a close, I found myself with the time and the proper perspective, because now I was reflecting, and I thought, wow, I want to capture this and put it down while I still have it on top of mind. So
So talk to me about the American dream. You
yeah,
mentioned the American dream earlier in our conversation, and I'd be curious to you, what was the American dream 50, 55 years ago when you were in high school?
yeah,
You know, when you were a young chap in high school in Denmark,
yeah.
you were dying to come to America. What was the American dream for you? And then I want to go to where we are today. And do you think the American dream is still relevant?
Yeah. Well, to me, the American dream was individualism. I was free to pursue my own destiny. I had freedom, freedom defined in terms that I was not used to, because I was used to a lot of, common beliefs that this is what you can do, or this is where you belong, and this is the limitation, and this is this, and this is that. And then if you make it, you probably robbed somebody. Just the fact that it was that the individual success was embedded in the American, dream, was so compelling to me. Just that I had the opportunity, just that I could do it, and then I saw other people be successful, and I was super inspired by that. And of course, I didn't come with much. I came with I think I had a $49 chair from Kmart and a mattress on the floor when I first came over. I mean, I was confident I could do it. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew I was going to do it. There was no question about it. And it was all just anchored in all the supporting elements that I saw right in front of me, people being successful. Of course, there's a materialistic sort of component to that, driving nice cars, doing stuff, having nice things, and all of that, which is all wonderful. And when we get to the perspective where I am now, probably a little bit different than it was back then. Obviously, that was a driving motivator. I mean, my God, I didn't go out and be successful, buy a nice car. When I bought my first car, which was an impossibility in Denmark, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm buying a new car. I can't believe it. I live in the pit hole of a basement apartment, but I got a new car, and I'm driving this thing all the time. So every little step on the ladder, every rung had sort of that building effect, that I was just one step further ahead than I was before. And it just, and I found a way to reinforce things when things were hard. I didn't look at how hard they were. I just looked at what's the next rung on the ladder that I want to be on. So that was my perspective then. And I'll grant you, I mean, probably more materialistic when I was a young man. Today, my
I think we
definition.
all were, Gorm.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you're young, you're fired up,
Yeah.
you don't have much, and you see
No,
people with stuff, and you want to
yes.
be them.
You want to be them. You want to
And
be that thing.
and
Yeah.
then something happens, and I'm not sure what it is. Maybe we get a few of those things,
Yeah.
and we realize, like, yeah, they're cool. That's
Yeah.
nice,
Yeah.
but I think we learned to value other things. Do you have a family, Gorm?
Yes. I got a daughter and a grandson, and yeah. So, but I mean, the rest of the family's in Denmark. But I got my wife, my daughter, and my son-in-law, and our little grandchild. So,
Yeah, it's amazing how our interests and values change. Don't get me
oh,
wrong. I like my
oh,
boat. I like
yeah,
my boat
yeah,
and I
yeah,
like my toys and I like our pool. I
yeah.
do like that stuff, but there's a certain point though where like I don't think there's anything else I really want right now.
That's it. That's exactly it. You reach that pivot, and to me, that's what one thing is the blessing of age and probably a certain amount of wisdom. And then when you have it,
A
right? So
certain
how
amount of
much?
wisdom. That is true. I have a certain amount of wisdom myself. A
Yeah,
certain amount.
yeah, a certain amount of wisdom, because you're always learning, right? You're never done, so you can't say
A
you got
certain
wisdom
amount. I will not
because
tell you how much.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But you get to the point like you're talking about when you've got it, so you got it now. How much more could you possibly need? What are you going to do with it? So that it's like it's like Maslow's evolution, right? You kind of reach the pinnacle of the pyramid, and you're standing there and say, "Well, I got all my basic needs covered, and I'm up here. So what do I want to do with that? How do I want to invest that?" You know, and that may have sort of an influence on this whole thing you're talking about selling and things of that matter. Is well, in my value system, it's about making a difference in other people's lives. That's what gives me the greatest satisfaction. And what better what better group of people to do that with than the people that are right around you, that are helping you along in the journey. So that becomes my work family. That becomes everybody who works for me, and see them move forward and see how they get lifted up in their lives and move forward, and knowing that you can help be a part of that. That's probably, I think, one of the greatest rewards, is to be along on that journey. And probably one of the things that runs a little counter for me to just get out is I want to be with the family. Maybe that has something to do with being an immigrant too. I mean, that's kind of my extended family, right? So, um, but I think it's also brought about uh, as I've gotten older, more of an awareness of how important it is to pay things forward. Uh, I mean, I've always said, if you pay things forward, you never have to worry about what comes to you. It'll come automatic. Are you going to be disappointed once in a while? You bet you. You're dealing with people. You will be disappointed. But if you let that knock you off your course about paying it forward, then it wins and you lose, because it's all in your head. So, it's, you can, you know, my dad always said about being wronged by other people. He said, "Well, son, they're the ones that have to look at themselves in the mirror in the morning, not me." And so I always thought that was a tremendous learning lesson. He was a super likable person. Everybody loved him, and he had his own company and very, very tough going. But the perspective he had as he got older, before he passed away, that was one of the things I was able to tell him. I said, "Daddy, you were saying, well, I don't know, I'm kind of out of the loop, and I don't know if I made a difference." And I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "Where do you think all of this energy of mine comes from? What this perspective is what you gave me, that it's the difference you made in other people's lives. They continue living. You have your time limit, but if you pass that thought process forward, you can perpetuate that for generation to generation and make people rich in ways that they had never even thought of, because they can understand that they made a difference. If you count on getting the accolades for doing it, again, then you're doing it for you. You're not doing it for others. So it's not a question of how much comes back to you. It's a question of how much you're putting out there.
So, Gorm, let's talk about the American dream today.
Yeah.
Do you think it's changed in the past 50 years, or do you think the American dream essentially is the same thing? Do you think there's as much opportunity for immigrants in America as there was when you came over?
Even more so, because a vast number of the population seems to be giving up on the American dream and think that it's not there, which means you open up a huge gap for others. Because the fundamentals of America hasn't changed, in terms of how we operate as a nation and the fact that we're a capitalistic economy. It's still the same thing. You can argue for or against, and that becomes a philosophical discussion, but not a pragmatic one. But if you look at it very pragmatically, we're a capitalistic economy, and built on individuals' freedom to build and capture wealth. And so it is here as strong as it's ever been. But we unfortunately have a changing perspective in some quarters, where people expect to enter with more security and more lack of risk. Okay, there is no American dream without taking risk. But we've become more of a risk-adverse nation. And if you look at Europe, that's very characteristic. Europe is extremely risk-adverse on an individual level. That's why collectivism is more appealing in Europe than it is here, because we don't, and as a true entrepreneur, you can count on yourself, and that's pretty much it. So,
Sorry, tell me, define collectivism for me. I'm not familiar with that term.
Okay, well, collectivism is more of a,
roughly, give or
yeah,
take.
so like a social democratic society where you pay high taxes and the government pays for everything, education and you know, healthcare and all of those things, and sort of um uh caps both ends, both the bottom and the top of the, you know, socioeconomic ladder.
Yeah, a social, cultural, and political philosophy that prioritizes the cohesion, well-being, and goals of the group over individual desires, which is quite the opposite of the American dream, as you put it, where the individual. I mean, this is the whole Adam Smith and what is it, the invisible hand, right? The power of the individual is ultimately
Yeah,
good for the masses. Is I think the Adam Smith philosophy.
yeah, yeah.
Um, why do you think you said earlier? I just have two more questions for you, and then we'll wrap it. Why do you said earlier that 50% of like the billion-dollar tech companies are immigrant founded?
Yeah.
Um, why do you think that is? Why is it so disproportionately represented in high growth startups?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with risk, and then and I think that's why as an immigrant you have a different risk tolerance because you're at risk the minute you enter. So you know, it's like, you know, you get further up the ladder as far as your risk tolerance is concerned. We also get people in here that have, you know, educated themselves to incredible levels and have special, you know, gifts, obviously, you know. So but you know, but when applied here, they just really catch traction where they don't have in their native countries the same opportunities. And I mean, you know, one of the big things about America is we're the world's largest cohesive marketplace. That's why everybody wants to come here. We we have one language standard. We have uh, even though that's not entirely true, you know, we're being perceived as one, you know, cultural mass, if you will. So you can grow things in America to much larger proportions within one market than you can in markets around the world because they're much smaller and they all have different cultures.
So the last question I want to end with, it's a little bit cheesy, but I'm gonna do it anyway because this is a question I've heard a million times. But it's the reason I'm going to ask it is because it's meaningful to me right now. I've been thinking a lot about my younger self, and it's funny. I have this voice in my head, Gorm, and I think it's
Yeah,
my 15-year-old in voice in
yeah,
me that's usually combating my
yeah.
55-year-old self. So I've been thinking about this a lot recently. And I'm curious if you were to bump into that 15-year-old kid back in high school in Denmark, maybe the year after you come back from America, you're all excited about America, but you have no idea what's going to happen. What would you tell yourself? Any advice? What would you tell your 15-year-old self? You're 68 now. You can go back and talk to that person. What do you tell that person?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that I would have, you know, much advice in terms of how to do things differently. I mean, you know, it's because it's a process, right? You learn things as as you mature, you learn things as you get beat up, you learn things as you're successful, but it's a journey. And if I'm advising young people, I do some of that, you know, in the entrepreneurial stuff. Uh, it's really about making them understand that the sooner they can put themselves out of the equation and look at what it is that they want to accomplish, the quicker they'll be successful. Ego is what drives the thing when you're young. I mean, that's just the way it is. You got a lot of go juice. You want to go out there and do it, but you may not be, um, you know, the most empathetic person, or you may not be. You may be looking at what can I get for me, uh, and young entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general, we have a tendency to you know, this is mine, right? This is mine. It's my company. It's my idea. It's all about me. And it's very gratifying in the sense that you can at least hold that in front of you and it helps you get through a lot of stuff. On the other hand, you have to understand that the thing you are creating is an entity of its own. And regardless of how you want to interact with that, presently or going forward, you have to respect that you are creating something that's not yours, even though you created it, because it's going to be owned by all the stakeholders that are in it. And if you add external stakeholders, like investors and whatever, that becomes even more complicated. And more you're going to find yourself, moving to the back of the pack instead of being at the front of the pack. And you're going to have to let that living organism take on its own course if it's going to be successful. Otherwise, it's going to live and die with you. And that's a lot for a 15-year-old to take in, I think.
What I heard there, if I were the interpreter between you and your 15-year-old self, I would turn to your 15-year-old self. I'd say, you know what he just said? He said, get started faster in building your business. Don't
Yes.
stick around too long with
No.
working for other people. Is that what, did I hear that correctly?
Absolutely. I'll
I
take it.
love that.
What I took from my 10-year career with corporate, I learned a ton. I didn't get rich doing it, but I moved the universe because I had a boss that let me. Okay. And it built the confidence and it built my knowledge and it taught me all the things that made it possible for me to go out on my own later on and become very successful. Because without all of that knowledge, I probably couldn't have done it. So life is continual learning. And like you said, the quicker you can get ahead and get it started, and the more you understand to learn. Learning is God's blessing to everybody. You are never done. You will learn things till the day you step in the grave, and that's the blessing. Don't get to a point where you think you've learned everything, because there is no such animal. And
What's
things
something you
continue.
learned in the past month or so?
Huh?
What's something you've learned in the past month or a few weeks?
Well, like with this book, for instance, I'm learning everything about book publishing, how that works, and working with people all over the globe. And I'm going, holy mac, I knew nothing. And I'm just so excited, about, being in learning that whole process, because it excites me. It's new. I love to start things. I mean, you had a gentleman on, I listened to one of your things that talked about people that get fed up with what they created, right? And for me, it's always been a point. If I get there, I need to step over somewhere, because I got to have the fire. I got to have the newness. I got to have the new challenges. That's where I burn. When everybody says, why would you want to do that? That's when I want to be involved.
Gorm Tuxen, the Immigrant Entrepreneurship in America is your book. I found it on Amazon. Is there a better place for people to get it?
It's available everywhere. Ingram publishes it, so the ISBN numbers are on Amazon, so that it can be bought anywhere. I know Amazon's pretty good about getting it out quickly, so it might be a good place to start. So,
Thank you for joining me, Gorm. I very much appreciate it.
well, thank you for having me, Dave. I appreciate having me on.